to, go ahead.
Garden as well.
The garden, we also have a garden here that the community comes and takes care of. So all those things pay for, our membership pays for all those things that we do as a club. So this is our 80th year. We were born in 1945. Joan's parents, this lovely lady here in the red coat, started the club as a response to all the chemicals that came home from World War II that were being repurposed for gardening to farms and gardeners. And they were so upset by that they wanted to promote organics so that people had an alternative to all the chemical use that was being widely circulated back in 1945. So if you want to continue help us with our mission, please become a member, and you can do that on our website, become a member, and you can click on the link there. I don't think our treasurer is here, but you can talk to David about being a member. Yeah, if you want to become a member tonight. Member benefits include discounts to certain things on our website you can see, and we're hoping to add to that list a bit. What else is a benefit?
You get to know about local events here in Austin that are.
It also puts you on our newsletter. It tells you all about local events. Also, we have a massive Facebook group of almost 11,000. So joining our Facebook group is a great way to connect with people in your community, and also just ask all the garden advice and become a member of, a lot of things. It's a pretty active group. So, and we're also on Instagram. So if you want to like us on Instagram. Any questions? No? So tell me who is new. Please stand up and introduce yourself. Hi, Paul. Oh, well, welcome. Anyone else? Hi, welcome. Oh, yes. Thank you. Welcome. Anyone else? Hi, Kendall.
I live in Winter Woods, just on the side and I've been gardening for a while, but I'm
thanks for coming. Anyone else want to say hi?
September, in Winter Park, having a very low key gardening with
Well, welcome. Thanks for coming. So our lovely volunteers made Valentine for everybody to take home. The seeds on top of them are cover crop seeds. And cover crop seeds are a great way to sequester carbon, hold moisture in your yard, and keep the dirt from being bare in this winter time of year. I think they're winter cover crop seeds, and they're clover, vetch, and pea. And there's enough for everybody to have one. So you can actually give it to your sweetheart and say, plant it for me, please. And they can plant it and grow your love. So it'll grow. It's made with wheat paste. So you can also, it's biodegradable completely.
Mary, what were the seeds again? Pomegranate?
No, pea, vetch, clover. Soon we will bring the summer cover crop seeds in about probably next month, March. And you can start planting those in April, May, June. But I think you could still plant some peas and have another month or two of peas. So yeah, no problem. Do you want to say any more about your workshop?
So for the next event, we'll be growing microgreens and small little trays that you can do indoors, outdoors. They are really high in nutritional benefit and very easy to grow at home, just like the lettuce that we'll be learning about today. And the idea behind microgreens, each one has enzymes, vitamins, and minerals that are in very high dense nutrient amounts. Just being able to turn over nutrients that you can have on a regular dietitianary basis every week to every 2 weeks, hopefully can help the people here who want to improve their health and knowing what organic looks like even on a small basis level too. But we'll be able to eat those on small pieces of bread and just include the culinary experience of microgreens beyond just the health of what they do. And that'll be part of the education with the company Revo Greens that I work with, the only lab grade microgreens company in the nation. But my name's Ethan. Thank you for being here tonight. We really appreciate all the members signing up and joining us, making organic gardening the future that we need.
Henderson. So,
Ethan,
Yes,
is that
So-
next month's program?
that'll be the
The-
beginning activity, just like with the
Oh,
seeds we
okay.
started today. That'll be part of the program as well.
I also want to say on the free table over here, we've got some orchids. It looks like some basil. There's some different natives in those smaller and the bigger pots in the back. Mint, and there's some tulle. Tulle is the white fabric, Tulle. It's kind of a really good fabric for gardening, for like covering plants when you don't want insects or putting around a fruit tree, things like that. And we've cut it all up, so there's enough for a whole lot of people. You can just grab a bundle that's, for you because it's all in separate links, so.
Brought in some cutting of basil, it's an assortment of basil from Sunshine's plant sales. I had to trim back the basil, so I also brought some Ziploc bags. So if you want a variety of basil, not to grow, just to eat.
Yum.
Try, saying whether you can root it. And then on the same note, Sunshine's plant sale is March 1st.
Oh, thank you for telling us.
Tomatoes,
Oh, that plant sale is so fun. They have fun vendors and lots of varieties of stuff. It's at Sunshine Community Garden on the first Saturday of March, right? Which is the first.
copy. Patty Leander, who does the gardening calendar for Travis County, has come up with a new one. So there's a new one out there. If you look really hard at Travis County website, you can find it. But it's split considerably. Like now it's sort of semi-okay to plant tomatoes in the middle of February. The thing is sparse. But anyway, it's been redone, new, and take a look at it. I just put it, like it's different from the other one. She has it shaded, and somehow my computer makes everything a black line, so it doesn't tell you anything. But it's a new planting calendar.
Oh, planting color. Okay. All right. Go ahead, Joan.
And I brought 2 types of seeds. One from a pumpkin that we put a display around our front door this fall. But I've been eating them, and this pumpkin was particularly good, so I brought it to you. You're welcome to take some. And the other thing was organic orange seeds from a tree in a backyard. That many variety. But if you would like to try it, feel free.
Thank you, Joan. All right.
And
Go ahead.
in 1945, I was 5 years old.
Yay, Joan, 85. Wow. She's our oldest member.
Russ,
Oh. No, I meant member. He didn't come when he was 5. All right, well, I'm going to introduce our speaker, Kyle Massey. Kyle founded Lone Star Lettuce Growers in 2019 in Round Rock in his backyard after discovering the potential of soilless systems for growing organic lettuce. Kyle left his corporate job to build a 12,000 square foot greenhouse, and in 2021, the farm became a USDA Organic Certified Aquaponic operation and later transitioned to USDA Organic Hydroponics in 2022 for better efficiency. Today, they grow and harvest around 250,000 heads of organic living lettuce annually using a water-efficient system, recirculating deep water culture system. Their local grown lettuce has a superior shelf life and reduced transit time compared to out-of-state operations. Kyle.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me. Can you all hear me? Okay. So yeah, great to be here. Again, thank you for
Presentation on Zoom,
sure.
if you're ready.
Yeah, do you know how to do that? Sorry. This screen doesn't quite look the same.
Zoom window.
Oh, it's like share my screen.
Yeah. So, yeah, gotta pick one. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this. Okay.
Okay. Is that working there?
Now you can screen.
Okay. How's that? Is that good? So yeah, again, thank you all for having me. Great to be here. I would love for this to be more interactive, so feel free to raise your hand or just blurt out a question. That doesn't bother me. So I'd love to make it more of a discussion versus just me rambling on for an hour. So again, my name is Kyle Massey. I founded Lone Star Lettuce Growers back in 2019. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my story, and then we're going to dig into the operation and talk about everything we do and how we do it. And yeah, hopefully it's of interest. And again, feel free to ask all the questions. We are very much an open book operation. There's no trade secrets we have. So yeah, feel free to speak up. So a little about me, because again, my background is not traditional, what you think of for a hydroponics farmer, but I did my undergrad at UT. I studied both finance and biology, which is a really weird combination, but I feel like I had the passion for both of them. Just had no idea what I wanted to do. But I graduated in 2009 in the middle of the recession. Jobs are hard to come by, so I went and worked in corporate finance, and I did that for 4 years up at Frito-Lay in Dallas, and I'd say I liked it, but never loved it. Always kind of knew I would move past it, but it was a great experience. After 4 years, I transferred up to Quaker, which is up in Chicago. So that's my lone time of living outside of the great state of Texas. Probably will not do it again. But again, had a good experience up there, learned a lot. That's where my fiance, now wife, we got married up there. So after, again, another job in corporate finance, I did grad school at Northwestern in Chicago, way too cold up there. And then I did one more stint, corporate finance at Gatorade. So a lot of great experience, learned a whole lot. But after doing that for about a decade, I came to the realization I didn't want to sit at a desk for the rest of my life. So this is 2019, I believe. I kind of realized I need to find something else for the satisfaction of my life. So so in 2019, this is when this idea really started. So I have a picture. This is in my backyard in Round Rock. This is it's a homemade aquaponic system that I built just off of some internet research and a few $100s at Home Depot. I literally went to PetSmart and just bought the cheapest goldfish I could find and filled up that trash can and started growing lettuce for our family. Turned out they all really liked it, and we started sharing with some neighbors, and they all liked it too. And that's when the idea kind of sparked. So I started calling wholesalers and restaurants and talked with folks at HEB, and turns out there's a big demand for locally grown produce. especially greens, things that you can't grow in the traditional Texas climate. So one thing led to another. I started visiting other farms, learning best practices, built out a business plan. And in early 2020, I finally pulled the trigger. I quit my corporate job. Was wondering, had no idea what I was doing, honestly. And I bought a 5-acre plot up in Georgetown and started building a 12,000 square foot greenhouse, which is something I'd never done also. Building metal buildings is very difficult, I learned, and I hope I never have to do it again. All right, so before I get into how we do things today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the initial launch, which again was organic aquaponics. So going back to my biology background, I was all for making it as natural as possible, and aquaponics is a great way to do that. So for those of you who don't really know what aquaponics is, that is growing and raising fish, and the fish in turn fertilize your vegetables and also cleanse the water of all of the ammonia and nitrites and nitrates. And so it's a recirculating, sustaining ecosystem. So here's a picture. This is of me and a few of us. We're putting up that greenhouse. Here's some pictures of the aquaponics system. So you see that big green tank. That's a 1,200 gallon fish tank that I would fill up with hundreds of pounds of tilapia. And from that tank, water would flow down through this trough system and then eventually recirculate back to the tank. So again, you feed the fish, they breathe, pee, and poop, just like all animals do. There's ammonia. So it's a lot of ammonia is being poured into that tank, but there's also an incredible amount of nitrifying bacteria all through this system that is converting that ammonia into nitrites and nitrates, and essentially the plant food that can grow these gorgeous organic greens. So we had some success with our system. Honestly, I should not have done this as a homemade, just design it myself type system. That was way over my head. I mean, it was much cheaper doing it that way, but turns out it's very difficult to grow and raise a large amount of fish. And I found out the hard way. And I'll forever have nightmares about all of the dead fish I had to deal with. But so we had a lot of consistency issues because we would have fish would get sick or we'd have a big fish die off. And when that happens, the vegetables suffer. And so I feel like our consistency was just all over the place. We would have some great weeks that I would think this is amazing. And then we'd have some awful weeks and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with fish. So after about doing this for a year, I made the decision to stop aquaponics. I'm going to give it one more try, given I had this huge greenhouse built already. And I'm going to make a change to organic hydroponics and remove the fish from the equation. So now this is early 2023. It's when I took out the aquaponic system and rebuilt what it is today. Yes, sir. We just did tilapia, and we used they were West Nile tilapia, which are they're supposed to be the hardiest type of tilapia, so they can take big temperature swings, big pH swings, and they do well in a confined space. They do. The issue with catfish is they can struggle with temperature. So they'd be fine in the summer, but in the winter, when our greenhouse got down to 50 degrees or so, the catfish could really struggle. Yep.
Did you ever figure out why the fish were periodically healthy or unhealthy?
I don't have a full answer. One of the reasons is I didn't have enough filtration built into this system. So if you think of fish pooping, I mean, it's just like gross slime, essentially. A lot of that would build up and would create clogging issues. And so I think a big part of it was just, it wasn't as clean of a system as it should have been. Given this was a homemade type system. Again, I didn't have the investment to do the proper type of filtration you need for a system that size. I don't know. I sold that to someone else, and hopefully he's still growing with it. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you indicated you started out with goldfish,
Yep. That was for my small backyard system. Yep.
but that was successful.
It was, yeah. But I think at that tiny scale, it was never an issue. You know, just growing. I think I had like 20 little goldfish in my trash can. I mean, maybe a few pounds of fish compared to hundreds of pounds of tilapia. I think it was just scaled up too quick, and I wasn't quite ready for how to handle all of the issues. So yeah, in mid 2023, this is when again, I did a lot of additional research, visited other farms, and turns out there were a lot of other growers that had done the same thing I did. They started aquaponic and they converted to organic hydroponic, and every single one of them told me this would be the best decision you've ever made. And I now agree. So I also realized there were a lot of problems with my initial system. So this gave me the opportunity to fix a lot of the problems that I didn't plan for initially. So a few of them, one, dedicated storage. Initially, everything was in our one greenhouse facility, which just made it a mess. We weren't organized. We didn't have dedicated storage. We also started our seedlings in the greenhouse versus a separate location. And the truth be told, just we didn't have enough grow space. Like our grow troughs just weren't large enough to have the required output to be a sustainable, profitable operation. So that was the biggest change I knew I had to make. We just had to grow a lot more. And with that, again, if you saw that this image here, I mean, you can see we would be harvesting from all over the greenhouse. So we would end up getting 20,000 steps a day, walking all over the greenhouse, harvesting, and it was just not an efficient operation. For the amount of produce we were looking to move, I realized it needed to be much simpler, have dedicated spaces for everything, and really just make it much more of a well-oiled machine. And back to your question, one reason why we had issues with the fish, I learned the hard way, is I had no way of chilling or heating our water back with my first go. So if the water temp gets above 78 or so, you can't grow lettuce in the summer, or you're very limited on what you can grow. Even though the roots are submerged in the water, it's too warm a water to cool off the entire head of lettuce. So that was a big problem I knew I had to correct. And in the end, I decided to go with a single system, which is a much larger volume of water. So that solves a lot of the issues in that there's a lot less water temperature variability because it can insulate itself much better. But I knew I had to install a way to heat and chill the water when we're either in the middle of summer or the dead of winter. So here's a few pictures. This is me just redoing the plumbing. Again, wondering what I was doing with my life at that point. I used to sit in an air-conditioned office, and I'm here digging trenches in a greenhouse. So here's the system before we filled it with water. So again, you can see the size of these, we now call these ponds. They're not troughs, but they're significantly bigger in terms of square footage. So I knew their output was about to pretty much double, if not more. And so here's after we grew for a couple months, this is the first picture of a full pond of some of our gorgeous butterheads. Great question. So we're actually on municipal water out there, so we don't have to have a well. The only thing we do to our water when it enters our greenhouse is we have a catalytic carbon filter to pull out all the chloramine and chlorine. And I'm going to get to that a little later. But the chlorine and chloramine will kill all the bacteria in our system. So, which is a little scary considering we drink that all the time. But in this type of system, it will kill all of the good organisms that we need for all the nitrification and all the processes the lettuce needs. And we're going to dig into all the details of how it all works. Oh, before I get into, I also did a small rebranding. So here was our logo back when we were aquaponics, kind of clever with the fish under the lettuce. So I really just took out the fish, but kept the star, you know, emphasizing Texas grown, and kept the water, since we are growing on water and growing with no soil. So this is our current logo, and we've been rolling with this for a few years now. Okay, so I mentioned the need for a significantly improved storage area. So here's some pictures. So this Quonset hut I actually built right next to the greenhouse. It serves two purposes. One, on that top picture, it's our cold storage or hot storage, depending on the year, or the time of year. So this is where we store all of our raw materials, supplies, tools, all of that. That way the greenhouse is meant for one thing, which is growing and harvesting. And then on the lower end, this is the back half of the Quonset hut. This is a insulated room that I now have grow tables with these LED grow lights. And all of these tables, they're flood and drain watering systems. And it's all plumbed into our greenhouse hydroponic system. So we actually water, I think, just 3 or 4 times a week. I can just turn a valve and fill up any one of these trays, and it can fill up, and we bottom water all of our seedlings. So we can water about 29,000 plants in maybe half an hour or so. So it's a very efficient way for watering our seedlings and making sure everything is healthy in the seedling stage. And this room is insulated because the seedlings are a lot less delicate than the bigger lettuces that are in our greenhouse. So we don't want big temperature swings for the seedlings. We want to keep them nice and cozy in the winter and nice and cool in the summer. So this room, I have a mini split installed so we can control the climate, humidity, and all of that. Did you have a question?
Yeah, is the water for the flood and drain systems filtered, or do you have to change it regularly?
It's not. It's pumped directly from our ponds from the greenhouse. So we what we do is we fill up the top, and then we just drain to the next level, and we work our way down. And I don't know if you can see here, you can see that black basin under that middle table. So eventually the water will drain down into there, and then there's sump pumps down there that pump it back. So there's no wasted water in this process aside from, you know, what the plants take up.
Nutrient buildup, is that a factor? If you, or you, no? Okay.
The nutrient level, you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that water we're watering with, it has the same nutrient level as the rest of the greenhouse, which is excellent. So it's, sorry? Yes, yeah. Yeah, this is our nutrient solution. It's not just water. It's filled with nitrogen, with bacteria, with other nutrients, as well as oxygen. So it's great for our seedlings. Way too many YouTube videos. Yeah. Yeah, I did I'm probably understating like the amount of research I did. I mean, I've watched probably thousands of YouTube videos, just different ways for how to grow hydroponically, because there are multiple ways. I ended up landing on, and we haven't really dug into our system, but I landed on deep water culture because it's a great way for just high efficiency and high volume. But there's 5 or 6 other ways you can do hydroponics as well. And there's tons of internet research out there, as well as just visiting other farms. You can really find out anything you want to learn by visiting others. Folks are normally really quick to share their secrets, unless you go to one of the big boys that they won't let you in. But an operation like us, like we always host tours and we share exactly how we do it. And there are quite a few others that do as well, which I picked up a lot of tips and tricks from other growers around Texas. Before we move on to the greenhouse, so a few things about the storage here. I don't know if y'all can see the in the back corner on that upper picture. So that's a big stack of coconut core blocks. So each one of those blocks weighs about 10 pounds. So since we are organic certified, we actually make our own substrate, which is what we sow our seedlings in. So what we do is we put one or two of those blocks in this huge black mixing bin. We soak it overnight and it drastically expands and loosens up. So core is what about 80% of our substrate is made out of. The other 20% is just vermiculite, which is good for airflow and just health of the root system. So we sow all of our seedlings. They're from it's a company called Beaver Plastics. They're really popular, but we use 242 count Beaver plastics. So you can kind of see on the bottom there, each one of those trays is about probably 2 feet long, maybe a foot wide, and each one of them has 242 individual cells. So that is what we start our lettuce seedlings in. So in all, that bottom room there has about 29 to 30,000 seedlings that we're growing at any given time. And that's all cycling, like new ones go in there, and then 3 or 4 weeks later, the big ones are coming out and moving to our greenhouse. And so it's important that we always keep it moving at the right speed. Yep.
How do you put the seeds in there? Do you have individual little spots? Do you have to go thinning them?
Yep. Good question. So in that top picture, you can actually see it. We have a speedy seeder. So in the bottom left of that top picture, so that is it's a vacuum seeder for if we are doing a lot of sowing, we will use that. So what you do is you put a tray filled with substrate into the seeder, and then you turn that seeder over, and a vacuum holds down each seed in the correct spot. And then you flip it over, release the vacuum, and they all drop on the correct seedling locations. So if we're doing a lot of sowing, we'll do that. But really, our team has gotten so good at sowing, they can do it by hand almost just as fast, if not faster. So yeah, it depends how many we're going to do. Yep.
Okay, Mr. Biology, what kind of bacteria?
Yeah. We'll get to that. There's another slide coming up, but yeah, great question.
Does the water recirculate or do you dump water or how's that?
Yeah, so our system is fully recirculating, which is one of the main benefits of hydroponics. So it's estimated that recirculating systems like ours actually use 90% less water than traditional farming, which is counterintuitive given how much water there is in our greenhouse. There's about 45,000 gallons, but we've also never drained our ponds. We've drained an inch or two, like I think 3 or 4 times over 2.5 years. And that's just to correct a nutrient imbalance and give our system some more alkalinity. But we top off, I feel like, a few hours a week just with our hose. But I mean, our water bill, it's typically between $100 and $200 a month. Yep. Yeah, I mean, the water we're losing, it's just a transpiration. It's just to what the plants are taking up. But our ponds are always covered, so we're not losing to evaporation.
You're not topping off the filter.
Well, no, we just dump the hose in. Nope. I mean, aside from pulling out the chloramine. But yeah. So yeah, that's our seedling room, which again is very beneficial and required for growing at this capacity. Again, previously I did all of this in the greenhouse and it was just a mess. So before we dig into the greenhouse, you don't need to look into all the details of this, but this is a layout of the greenhouse. I just wanted to show y'all with the redesign, you know, that light blue color, those are our grow ponds. And so this is what I realized we had to do. The large majority of this, excuse me, of this square footage needed to be dedicated towards growing. And I think it's like, if you do the math, I think it's like 77% of our greenhouse grow space is dedicated towards actual grow space. So you see the size of those ponds. So those ponds are always filled with lettuce. So, which is what you need for operation like this. You have to have high efficiency and very high throughput to make it work. You don't, and that's one mistake I made previously. I thought you had to be able to access every head of lettuce, but that's actually very wrong. So what we do, actually, I think, okay, yeah, this next slide, I'll walk through the entire process for how this works. So so this is just like an overhead view of the entire operation. So here's the greenhouse, the larger structure on the bottom. And then here is the smaller Quonset hut that I spoke about earlier. So step number one is sowing. So we typically do that just in our storage space, either with a seeder or by hand. Step number two is our seedling room. So again, that's under grow lights. We can water all the plants very efficiently, multiple times a week, and just get great efficiency coming out of that room. Step number three is we call it transplanting. So again, this redesign is all built around simplicity. So once seedlings leave our seedling room, they all go into our main system on this one side of the greenhouse. So, and when I say transplants, after 3 weeks or so, those seedlings, they've filled out that root ball down in the coconut core. So we can really just pluck it up and move it from a tray into our grow rafts. So the grow rafts, they're much bigger. They're 4 feet by 2 feet. And they have much more space in between every hole. So they allow the lettuce head to really grow up into a full mature head. So that right into the greenhouse, that is where we do all of the transplanting. And through tips and tricks, our team's gotten very good at it. And we can typically transplant, I mean, up to sometimes 10 to 15 trays a day if we have a big harvest day. No, sir. Nope. The plug we pluck from our trays into rafts. Yep. So that is transplant. And once the rafts are in the system, I mean, we have 28-foot long just PVC poles that we can push all of those rafts down. So next is harvest. So that's step 4. So all of the harvesting we actually do on the left side of the greenhouse. So on a typical day, we always start with harvest. We start down here. We harvest the big plants out, move them into cases, coolers, however we're going to sell them. You can imagine that leaves an open space down here where the big plants just came out. So after we harvest, we can easily push the smaller plants down from the right side of the greenhouse. Now we have an open space on that end, and that's where the seedlings go in. Let's see, after we harvest, again, another mistake I made with aquaponics. Originally, this huge fridge was inside the greenhouse. Didn't make hardly any sense. So I moved that outside because that greenhouse space is very, very valuable. You don't want to waste any space inside a greenhouse that's not dedicated towards growing. And then step 6, that's just our door where customers come pick up. So they can just back up their trucks and we load them up, or we do have our own van. Sometimes we do deliveries, but that just symbolizes that produce is leaving the greenhouse at that point. And then these arrows. So one of the drawbacks of deep water culture is after you harvest a full raft of lettuce, you don't have a dirty raft that per food safety and organic procedures, you have to wash that raft before it can go back in. So I built, we call it the raft washing area. It's just like a 20-foot long concrete slab that we have racks built up that we can stack a bunch of rafts. We can hose off both sides really quick, clean them off, and then they eventually get carted over. Oh, sorry. They get carted over to the transplant area so they can get put in again. So this whole thing, it's really just an assembly line. And my last note I have here is you have to have an efficient team to make this work. And fortunately, we have a great team now. Jana's actually right here. She's our manager. So she runs the place and manages the team, make sure things are moving efficiently. But I have had some challenges finding folks who will come out and work hard, because this operation only works if folks work hard and if they work very efficiently. So, I mean, we're not running around, but we are moving briskly because we have a lot of lettuce to harvest every day. Sorry, what was that? The harvest? Yeah, so what harvest looks like is, again, it's all on that one far end of the greenhouse. We pull up the whole raft, we put it on racks, and when it's on a rack, we can pluck out the lettuce with the roots. So we sell everything with roots on. Yep. And yeah, I'll get to that here in a little bit, but there's a huge benefit to selling stuff with roots on that our customers love. But yeah, we can, if you can imagine one of the rafts, they're 4 feet by 2 feet. I mean, we can harvest a raft in, I don't know, 10 seconds or so. So a typical day, I mean, like today, they probably harvested, I don't know, what, 100, 120 rafts or so. Yep. Right. Yes, ma'am. No, humidity has never been an issue with us. It's obviously highly humid in there, given all the water. And during the summertime, our swamp cooler is running. So that's how we cool the greenhouse. But the lettuce doesn't mind it humid. So I will say the biggest challenge with humidity has to do with our own employees. We typically don't want to be in the greenhouse past noon during the summer, because even though it may be 83 degrees on the thermostat, it's 100% humidity. So the feels like temperature is well into the hundreds. So in the summer, we typically start around 6:30, and we're done hopefully between 11 and 12. We'll get to that. Yep. Yep. You mean the nutritional value of the lettuce itself? That's a good question. I've never had it tested for, well, I tested our lettuce one time. It was years ago when we had a nutrient deficiency, but I don't think it came back with anything. That was actually during aquaponics days versus hydroponic. But so yeah, I can't speak to if has higher nutrition. My gut feel is that it does for a few reasons. One, when we harvest, so everything we harvested this morning is actually already in our customers' hands. So one, it's super fresh, and two, it also has the roots on it, so it's not dead yet. It's still living, and those roots are still wet. So the second you cut something like lettuce, it starts losing nutrition, losing the freshness, losing the taste. And we'll look at some pictures here later, but I think just being fresh, living lettuce, it is a much healthier product than buying lettuce that's already been cut and has been dying for days, if not weeks, like from the grocery store. Yep. All right, so a little more into the system. So that picture there, so that's about 7-8 inches of water. And again, that water has been recirculating now for years. Aside from a couple, or sorry, I think maybe 3, maybe 4 drains we've done where we've taken out about 1 inch of water and topped off with fresh water. This water has been recirculating for going on almost 2.5 years now. So again, there's huge water savings, which it makes sense given think about just watering in a field. How much of that water is either just goes in the ground or is taken up by evaporation? Whereas this water, our ponds are always covered aside from when we harvest it. But once we harvest, we're instantly backfilling and covering those ponds. So there's no evaporation. Deep water culture in using this type of system with rafts on top of water, it's designed to maximize throughput. So when I say that, it's great for produce, like any type of green. You know, we've really found a sweet spot with lettuce, but I couldn't really grow tomatoes or peppers on this type of system. This system is meant for high throughput, very little, care into each plant. I mean, it takes us like half a second to harvest a thing of lettuce, where any other types of produce, like we don't have the time, and we lose all the efficiency if we were doing cut and come again or things like that. So this is built to just be moving through produce. The large body water, again, it's about 45,000 gallons. That's good and bad. It's good, and that is very slow for nutrient changes. Or if you have a nutrient deficiency, it typically comes on very slowly. You know, it typically doesn't happen like that, so you have time to adjust. But it's also bad in that this is all one system. So if you screw something up, we're in a tight spot. So even though there are 3 ponds here, they're all connected through the same type of plumbing. So that's a risk I took when I built this system. It's worked out so far, knock on wood, but yeah, it's worked. And lastly, it's easier to maintain the temperature given the huge body of water that is insulated on the top with that 1-inch styrofoam raft. So during winter, we can keep the water typically above 68. And during summer, we like to keep it below 76 or so. The cons to this, you do have to wash the rafts, but again, we've gotten pretty efficient with that. Again, you're limited to what you can grow. We've really only grown greens, and you need the square footage to house this type of system. All right, then I just have a few pictures. So here's a picture. This is the best time in the greenhouse at sunrise. So you can see the sun rising on the left side of the greenhouse there, and just the lettuce is in its most pristine time, or most pristine condition, right as the sun is coming up. So you can see the 3 ponds. So that far right here, we're growing green butter. The middle, I think, is a lot of red gems. And that far pond is a lot of our mix, which we will talk more about that. Here's, this is definitely taken during the summer. So this is from the other side of the greenhouse. And I know it's during the summer because a lot of that lettuce in that mix has lost its red, which is a challenge we've always had. So when the greenhouse heats up in the summer, it can be 103 outside, which means it's about 83, 84 in the greenhouse. But that is really too hot to grow lettuce. We've learned tips and tricks for how to do it. One of them being, you can see the shade cloth here. So that is 50% shade cloth. That is an internal system that can open and shut. But also, we have shade cloth on top of our greenhouses during the summer as well. So all in all, we're blocking more than 90% of our sun during the summer, which is actually fine because something hard to believe, if you take a spectrometer outside in the middle of July at noon, you're getting about 10 times the amount of sunlight energy that's required to grow lettuce. It's like well into like 3,500 angstrom micromoles per second, whereas you need closer to 300 or so. So we block a whole lot of sun during the summer. Here's just another pic. This is early in our days. Lots of different varieties you can see down the pond. There's a close-up. Actually took that this morning. So that's of our, this is of our mix. So our mix is probably our most popular variety that we grow. So it's a mix of red and green butterhead, also red and green oak leaf. So you can see the different varieties. But chefs and restaurants that we sell to, they love this because they open up that case of lettuce and they see just that gorgeous different colors and textures. So this is definitely our most popular and something really that not a lot of other growers do, which is a bit surprising. We do grow a fair share of just straight green butterhead, which is kind of what the typical hydroponic lettuce you see in grocery stores. But we enjoy doing this mix and having some variety.
Grow romaine at all?
We do. We grow, they're called red little gems. So they are small red romaines. So yeah, and we'll talk a little later about the varieties we grow, but that's the only romaine we grow. Okay, so let's talk about nutrition. So again, since we are organic, we're very limited on what we can and can't grow with. So again, back when I was researching this, I talked with multiple growers who had found this great combination for how to grow organic greens. And folks even told me like this is the top of the line for organic fertilizer. And I now believe it because this stuff is amazing. But this is called Preempt. It's a product. It's OMRI certified. It's from Hort Americas. They're up in the DFW area. We actually buy this by the tote. So it comes 275 gallons worth that is just sitting in our greenhouse that we can. It's really simple. I mean, we just open the valve and fill up a small trash can. And then from there, we dump it into our system. But this is our nitrogen source, and it is a all-encompassing fertilizer. So it has all of the other nutrients we need. Next is our inoculant, which I would argue is actually even more important for us than that fertilizer is. But we've been using now, since we started, this Terabella product. It's also from Hort Americas. So this is our bacteria source, essentially. So it's filled with different types of nitrifying bacteria, also different types of beneficial fungus. So this is what makes all of the nutrients available to the roots. So we've had it happen a couple times when we've fallen behind on this, or we had an employee who left and stopped doing this without us knowing. If we ever have a nutrient issue, it's typically because we're lacking in our inoculant. So now the only downside is it's not cheap. I mean, that's 1 liter right there. And I think it's about $200 per liter. So it's very expensive for the folks at Hort Americas to get that certified OMRI organic. Big reason why it is so expensive. But we found tips and tricks for how to make it go further. Next this is just a huge bucket of molasses. And next here is our tip for how we make that inoculant go in further. So we have this 50-gallon mixing tank. It's actually in our seedling room because we have to keep it the right temperature. So what we'll do is we'll fill it up with some tap water. We'll add in a couple liters of Terabella, and then we'll add in quite a bit of extra molasses. And from the bottom, we have an air blower that can blow up bubbles. So the whole thing is just churning and just growing more and more bacteria. And that way we can make this Terabella go even further. So after a day or two, we typically dump it into the system. We just fill up a trash can, roll it over, and dump it into our system. And that will keep our bacteria levels super high, which we know because we test our water weekly. So we know what our ammonia level is, what our nitrate level is. And if those numbers are ever starting to come together, that's when we know we have an issue. But our ammonia level is typically under 0.5 parts per million or so, whereas our nitrate level we'd like to keep up over or around 60 or so. But that inoculant and this bacteria brewing station goes a long way because we don't have to use near as much Terabella since we're also just multiplying that bacteria ourselves.
Are you using any air stones to help the process, or are you using a homemade air pump to benefit?
You mean for this station? Yeah, there's just a small little air pump that's blowing bubbles from the bottom. Probably would work better with an air stone and put more oxygen in the water. That's a good idea. I think we'll probably try that. Any other questions about our nutrition? Again, it's pretty crazy. I mean, these are the only inputs we use, and we've grown amazing lettuce now for almost 2.5 years. So very different from traditional hydroponics, where they can micromanage different level of nutrients. You know, they can add potassium or magnesium, whereas we've learned, even though our water testing may show there's no potassium in the water, our organic system compensates for that. And the plants, there's no deficiency in terms of potassium. Like it can compensate given the nature of the organic system. All right, next. So this is equipment that is in the greenhouse. So for oxygen source, yes, sir.
Question online. Graphs made up.
They're just very tightly compressed styrofoam. Yep. But they do last a long time. In fact, unless we break one, I mean, we're going off of our rafts that we've had for years, as long as you wash them really well.
And I noticed when you had that one raft lifted, you had initially put the seedling with its coir plug into that hole. Where does that coir go? Just down into the water?
So a lot of the core stays in the root ball. In fact, most of it does, because it's all, the roots have surrounded and are holding together large chunk of that core. Some of the core does settle down on the bottom of our ponds, and so we do clean them out. We had our first clean out a few months ago. I just get I get a solid pump, or yeah, solid, I think it's called a solid pump. It's what they use for porta potties, but I use that, and it sucks up any of the core that's settled on the bottom, and that gets large chunk of it. Yep.
What is the depth of your pond?
It's about 7-8 inches. Yep. So those roots, I mean, the tip of them really sit on the bottom of the liner. Yep. Okay, so next is equipment that is in the greenhouse. So this is our oxygen source. So it's called a Moliere. It's a nano bubbler. This, in my opinion, was the best investment for the hydro redesign. So what this does, it has its own pump. You can't see it. It's behind this metal panel, but it pumps water from our system, runs it through this machine, and injects the water with nano bubbles, which those are bubbles so small that they don't float to the top, and you can't even see them. And those bubbles are filled with negatively charged oxygen. So our dissolved oxygen level in our system is typically above 12, which is just amazing for a hydro system. And very different from my aquaponics days back when we did just air stones. And you'd have a very different DO right by the air stone versus 10 feet away where you don't have an air stone. And so you see differences in consistency across your plants. But this, our entire system is just saturated with oxygen. And so that's how we get great consistency in the middle of our huge ponds. Here's one other picture. So this is of the corner of our greenhouse. This is all of the equipment that powers the entire system. So again, this system was built on simplicity. So that tank you can see in kind of the middle there, that's just an IBC tote that I dug and put into the ground. So it's underground, but that's what we call our mixing tank. That is where we dump our nutrients, our bacteria, where we add in fresh water, because from there it is moved through this. That's just a simple pool pump, and then it's circulated to all 3 ponds. It moves water at about 50 gallons a minute. So if you do the math, our system circulates almost twice a day in terms of moving water, that's what we want, because we want these nutrients, we want the bacteria and the oxygen, we want it all moving, past the roots as quickly as they can. All right. Someone asked earlier about what we grow. So through a lot of trial and error, we now only grow 3 different varieties. When I started, I used to think we're going to grow 10 different things and everyone's going to be happy and we're going to be able to offer just everything to everyone. And that was a big mistake, because the more varieties you grow, the more complicated your system has to be. So what we've learned is these 3 varieties, they all grow really well in our system. There are lettuce varieties we've grown that just for whatever reason, they don't grow great in our system. So again, it's a lot of trial and error that's led us to these 3 varieties. But these are green butters, the technical variety name. They're called Rex. They're from Johnny Seeds, super popular. They're very, very heat tolerant. So there's no bolting, or you have to really let them mature in the summer for them to bolt, but they hardly ever bitter. Someone asked about the romaines. So these are our romaine varieties. So these are called red little gems. Chefs love these. And then lastly, this is our most popular. So this is our mix. So again, it's green and red butter, green and red oak leaf. And then in the summertime, when it warms up, we also add Lola Rosa in there as well. But for whatever reason, Lola Rosa doesn't like growing in the cold. So they won't mature. So we'll probably add those back into our mix here in a month or 2. There's a picture of some other butterheads like we would sell at a farmer's market. I think I've already mentioned this, but everything is sold as living. So we sell everything with the roots on. So at a minimum, you get a 2 to 3 week shelf life out of it. I've actually kept it in my fridge for over a month, especially if you keep the roots somewhat damp. It just stays alive and it won't die like traditional lettuce. I've even had people at a farmer's market, they buy lettuce from me, they take it home and replant it in their garden, and it will just keep growing. Yep. Yep.
Are those just sitting in a box?
Yes. So this is how we sell most of our produce. So it's called bag and box. So that's just it's a cardboard box, and there's a plastic liner. It's just a 1 mil liner, because the lettuce technically can't touch the box, but it can touch a food safe liner. So the roots are down on the bottom, staying wet. And yeah, we fill up every case to make sure it's nice and hefty, and it'll last a long time.
I see those butter crunch heads that are in the plastic
Yep.
bubble with the roots at the bottom. So that's not what you do.
Nope. We've actually never sold in clamshells. So that is, and we don't sell in retail. We'll get to that here in a little bit, but most of our produce goes to wholesalers or to restaurants. And from those wholesalers, it goes to schools, to businesses, to other restaurants. But yeah, we don't sell into retail. I do have some packaging that we can do for retail, but I've yet to take that plunge, because we've really been selling everything just fine. So I don't want to overcomplicate things. Right now, we're only in one farmer's market. It's one in Cedar Park. But we have been in multiple around Austin before.
I've never seen that sold with the roots.
Yep.
It's not available.
Ours is not available in retail. If you would like to buy it, yeah, farmer's market's probably the best option. And we do have we've been there so long. We have a very loyal customer base. I mean, they come and buy lettuce every week, and 'cause yeah, it really is. It's much fresher, and you can almost taste the nutrition versus eating just store-bought lettuce.
That farmer's market, what are your hours? Lakeline?
It used to be Lakeline. They moved a bit north. It's called now, it's called Texas Farmers Market at Bell. It's in that new Bell district. It's actually a much better setup, but, so yeah, if you put it in Google Maps, Texas Farmers Market at Bell, it's, Saturday mornings from 9 to 1. Nope. You mean how we sell at markets? So at markets, we sell two things. One is our family bag. That's what this is. So that's 3 heads and 1 biodegradable bag. We also sell singles in just a smaller plastic bag. But folks like buying the family bag, even though, I mean, it's a whole lot of lettuce, but again, it will last you weeks. So it's not like you have a few days to eat it like grocery store lettuce. Lastly, I have on here locally grown. I found is the most important attribute of our lettuce. I mean, you can see on our logo, we call out organic, local, and fresh. When I started this, I thought organic was going to be the selling point, and it is very important. Some of our customers demand organic, but locally grown, especially for lettuce. The stat that blows me away is 90% of the lettuce that Texans eat, it comes from either California or Arizona. Because no one grows lettuce in Texas. You can't do it unless you do it indoors. Yeah, you have a couple months, but yeah, when the freeze hits, yeah.
Do you give tours to children? Like you said that you also sell to schools because they need to see this.
Yep. We have given some tours to, I've yet to do a tour to like a big school, mainly because we are a Global Gap food safety certified facility. So we can't be having kids touching things. But I've had smaller groups like homeschool kids have come out and we do tours. I'd be hesitant to let a group of just like 20 or 30 kids in. Well, yeah, or adults. Yeah. Yeah, we do tours, and I'll talk a little bit about that. It's great. Like, it's great to see it in person. It's probably not doing it justice, just pictures of it, but it's yeah, really cool to see. Yes, yeah. If like unless you're one of our employees and you have clean hands, like no one's allowed to touch really the lettuce or anything else. But a few other things. We actually haven't grown this stuff in almost a couple of years now. We used to grow gorgeous rainbow chard and quite a few varieties of kale, and it did amazing and tastes amazing. But again, through trial and error, these things grow at different speeds than lettuce. And if you remember when I talked about just the process, it's in on one side, out on the other. So, you know, the kale and the chard would get to the end and you look at it, it's like, oh, it needs a few more days, but the lettuce behind it is ready to go. So that's what we don't want, because that brings inefficiency to the whole operation. Now you're moving rafts within the pond, and that just takes away all of the efficiencies. So yeah, could do that. Yep. Yeah, have a kale dedicated greenhouse, and yeah, then we'll be in business. Another issue, like for whatever reason, you grow kale, I feel like it just signals to every pest within a square mile that you're growing it. So even though you're growing in a greenhouse, they find their way in. So we typically don't have those issues with lettuce, but kale, for whatever the scent it gives off, we did have some pest issues with kale.
Kale spinach, something you can't grow because it gets too warm.
I have not tried any spinach, actually. Yeah.
That's the more heat tolerant. That's so you can.
Okay.
Start that.
Yeah. Sorry, I know I'm probably going over time. A little bit about kind of the business side. This is looking at our output per week. So you can see, I mean, it's a pretty clear parabola. Like we peak in the summer, back when you get tons of sun and lots of heat. Right now we're in the low portion, the middle of winter where we're not seeing much sun. But all in all, it averages close to about 250K heads per year. Here is where volume goes. Again, most is to wholesale. Here's even what we get for organic heads of lettuce. So we get somewhere between $1.45, $1.60 per head. Same thing with direct to restaurants. Some grocery delivery firms, we get a little more because sometimes we will individually bag heads, and so that gets a premium. And then farmers markets. I love markets because you get to talk to customers. They're also great because we can just charge what we want, really. And if you flash the organic logo and flash this lettuce out on the table, most folks won't just walk by. So, yep. Right.
Those numbers are per head or?
Per head. Yes, sir. And I found for non-organic lettuce, at least in talking with other growers, they get closer to maybe $1.20 per head in terms of selling to wholesale. Yeah. So we get a premium being organic. And back to the retail discussion, we don't have to worry about packaging or distribution. So if we were to sell into HEB, you know, they would demand you have to be packaged and you have to get it down to San Antonio, and you might get $2 a head and you can probably make it work. But we found this nice little sweet spot of selling to a few different channels. And I mean, all in all, we average about $1.75 a head. Exactly. Yeah. And again, it's all about efficiency, because when you start individually bagging heads, that's when you really slow down. It also gets costly. What else can you grow hydroponically? Yeah, you can grow, I mean, really anything except for like root vegetables. I mean, you obviously can't grow like potatoes, but folks grow tomatoes, peppers, strawberries. Greens are probably the most popular. But if you go into HEB, I mean, you can find hydroponically grown strawberries or hydroponically grown tomatoes.
Difference between organic and non-organic is usually close to double the price. Why do you all from 120 to 100? Maybe they're margin.
Yeah, that's just the lettuce market. I wish it was double, but it's not.
But the difference between retail and wholesale, is that normal, you know?
I don't think it's double. At least for lettuce. Like if you check lettuce, it's hard to believe it's double. But yeah. Yeah. Oh, we have farmers markets call me all the time to invite us there. The tricky thing with markets is I have to find someone to run them and to do a good job. And finding labor has been difficult, just hard to believe. It's like I will pay folks $25 an hour to go run a market, and I can't find people to do it. So I end up running them way too often, and I have 3 little kids at home, so I can't do that on the weekends. So, but if I can find people to run markets, you can make a killing at markets.
How is it an art show? We can some people from Mexico and in South America who had art cooperatives, and I think the artist studio, and then the art was brought to America to show the show. And it seems like cooperative knowledge or something like that.
It could. Yeah. For us, I mean, I used to be in like 4 or 5 markets a weekend. There's like 2 or 3 around Austin that are the big ones. I mean, Mueller is king here. We used to do really well there when we'd be the only lettuce guy. But it's almost not worth it to go to the smaller markets. where you'd sell like a quarter of what you could at Mueller. Yeah. So we found you just have to focus on the big ones. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
High powered.
Have not, no. You know, we've just done kale and we have done some herbs, like we did cutting spinach, basil and parsley. But yeah, haven't done any of that in quite a while. One addition we actually just made a couple months ago. So again, if you remember that chart, oh, I got it down here. So here's what our normal output looks like. So you think of during the winter, I mean, the days are just significantly shorter. You're getting less sun. So we have this huge dip in production. So we installed these grow lights really in kind of the front third of our greenhouse. They're LEDs, pretty energy efficient, and they're burning currently, I think, 14, 15 hours a day, but they've really increased our output during winter. In fact, instead of seeing what those red bars look like, our volume's now closer to that green dotted line. So much more consistent output throughout the year, which is huge. Really quick, I think I've talked through most of this, but the difference between organic and traditional hydro. So I much prefer organic. It's much more natural. I also love that I know exactly what is on our lettuce and more importantly, what's not on our lettuce. So, I mean, even though technically I have to tell every customer you should always wash lettuce because it's a high risk crop, even though we are not growing with any type of like manure. But lettuce is a high risk crop, so you should always wash it. But I eat it just straight all the time because I know there's no chemicals on it and it's completely natural. Whole lot less draining in terms of draining your water source. I've talked about that quite a bit. The fertilizer and the inoculants are much more expensive, but in turn you get the price premium. And we see that flow through pretty well here in Austin where there is a good organic market. Talking organic, or sorry, traditional hydro, it's more unnatural. You know, they are adding different salt levels and it's a much more scientific balance, which in turn means they have to drain their water quite a bit more. Because if their salt balance gets out of whack, it can ruin the entire, their entire crop. So a lot less water efficiency going on there. But they can be very precise in terms of adding certain nutrients. So they can add potassium or they can add calcium, whereas we typically just let nature do its thing. And fortunately, it's worked out for us.
Certification organic. You
Mhm.
don't use any sprays,
Nope.
and that's part of the certification, or it's just your choice?
It's both. But you can't get certified if you spray things that are not organic certified. What was that? There are. So the one thing we do spray quite a bit, really during the spring and summer, is we spray. It's a strain of Bacillus thuringius for caterpillars. So caterpillars are really our biggest problem, but that's organic. It's a natural occurring bacteria, so we can spray our lettuce with that. And it's not a chemical, that it's a naturally occurring bacteria. Yep. So here's a picture of this is actually of Revel Greens up the road in Temple. I mean, they're like we obviously can't touch their scale. I mean, their greenhouse is literally 30 times the size of ours. But again, I think they do grow some organically, but most is not. So it's much more of a scientific. They have a formula and they have it down to a T. But again, it's not as natural.
Tornado hit that, that'd be awful.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I have insurance, I guess. Yeah. Not yet. Nope.
All yours natural because you're putting what the soil would have in it in the water.
Correct.
Nothing's missing, so you don't.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. The roots don't need soil. They need all the nutrition. They need oxygen. So it's just how you can grow in water. Yep. I've thought about that, and it's funny you say that. I get approached at least once every week or two from a different solar panel company. It's like word has gotten out, like, about our operation, and so they want to make us like fully green and, no energy coming from the grid. I mean, I've looked into it. It pays off in about 10 years, but I have different things I'm focusing on right now. Our operation is fairly energy efficient. I mean, our power bill ranges between, I don't know, like 800 to 1,400 a month, depending on the time of year. So our greenhouse has a computer, so it turns things on and off to keep the optimum environment, but also use the least amount of energy possible. So our power goes a long way. Yep. No, we only harvest 3 days a week. That's another thing is our labor has gotten so efficient. So we harvest Monday, Wednesday, Friday, just mornings. And then Tuesday is typically our sow day. And our employees, they're all great for whatever reason, they're not full time. Like they're looking for just part-time work. So they typically work just mornings at our operation. A few challenges. So working in produce, a lot of our customers, especially the Austin folks, they're demand driven. So they don't place orders unless they know they can move it. And that is tricky for us because we have a constant output. So we do have quite a few customers who have placed they've placed orders for the next 12 weeks or so, which is great, but still have quite a few customers who they'll call me in the morning like, hey, can you get me 100 cases today? And I'm like, all right, I'll try to fulfill you best we can, but that gets tricky. Pest control, especially in the spring and summer. Fortunately, knock on wood, we've been able to handle the caterpillars. The moths find their way in, but we just have to stay on top of it. Like at first sign, that is when we have to spray to knock them out. It has happened. I was actually on vacation and we had like a full infestation when I got back, and it just wasn't treated properly at first sign. So we certainly can stay on top of it and be good through the pest season, so long as we keep looking for them.
Did you say you use BT?
Yep. That's the main thing we use. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's amazing. Summer growing is tricky. I mean, even growing in a greenhouse, our greenhouse is cooled by a swamp cooler and exhaust fans, and then just a bunch of shade cloth, and that's it. So it can be 103, 104 outside, and we can keep the temperature typically low 80s, which is really too hot to grow lettuce. To grow lettuce, you really want to be under probably 75 or so. We can grow that because the water that the roots are in is nice and cool. So that keeps the lettuce from bolting and keeps it healthy. I mentioned earlier, it can be a challenge finding consistent, efficient labor, but fortunately we've had a great team now for quite a while. During the summer, the lettuce can honestly grow too fast that we can't keep up with it. And then I mentioned earlier, when it gets hot, the red really disappears from the red lettuce, which is a bummer because our customers love the red lettuce and they always ask me about it during the summer. They tell me they will buy as much red lettuce as I can grow, but when it's that warm in the greenhouse, if anyone knows a trick to growing red lettuce, let me know. It's also tricky dealing with all of the food safety and organic, and gets expensive. I mean, it's like, I think 3 or 4K to get organic certified every year, even more expensive to get food safety certified. And as of last year, the Texas Department of Agriculture decided to throw their hat into the ring So now we have to do an inspection for them as well. So it's like we do the inspections 3 different times for different certifications. It's a lot of paperwork and a lot of tracking we have to stay on top of. Small scale hydro, again, I talked, we can't compete with like Revel Greens. We're not big enough to fill out HEBs, but we have found a nice sweet spot. And then lastly, hard to believe, but I can't get an ag exemption for our business the way the law is written. So technically, we're not an agriculture company because the law is written just for traditional farming, and we are not farming a high enough percentage of our land since we grow in a greenhouse. Yep. Even though my argument to them is our output far exceeds if I were to grow traditional on the entire plot of land, but they kind of look at me and laugh and make me pay $7,000 a year, which is frustrating. So yeah, I've looked into lots of things. I've looked into bees. That won't work given our system. We can't have animals for the E. coli risk, because if an animal poops and someone steps in the poop, steps in our greenhouse, big problem. We would have to have way too many bees, and also a lot of our land is already developed. So like those folks at the, can't tell I'm bitter at all, but the folks at the property tax office, yeah, they pull up the map and they outline like a road, like our office, our septic area, and they're like, you've already developed all of this, so technically you can't farm enough to get ag exemption. So if anyone has any tricks there, let me know. I'm currently working with our councilwoman. She's been great, and she has legislation in committee for indoor growers, because a bunch of other states you can get exemption if you are an indoor innovative grower like this, but Texas just doesn't have it yet.
That's how much water you save by growing in the greenhouse as opposed to.
Yep. Oh, I've made that argument. I've made that argument too. They just kind of smile at me, and yeah.
Tried the mycological development of research of the soil around your property or vermicomplex and using hydroponics to get that at extent.
I have not, no. All right.
Ask you a bit about this. Do you have any friendly legislators?
I do, and I've met with my congresswoman, and she has legislation in committee right now during the Texas session. So I'm hoping within a year or two. Does it? All right.
Petitions at the farmers.
I should, yeah. And then lastly, like here's the aerial shot from Google Maps of our the 5 acres I own. So there is room for more expansion, more greenhouses, larger seedling room. That seedling room can just continue to move back. So yeah, that is it. Lastly, I'd just say we do tours, and if you want to come see it in person, I'd be happy to have any of y'all. Jana can certainly show you around and show you anything you'd want to know. But yeah, so let me know. And again, if you'd like to buy some lettuce, probably farmer's market is the best. Or if you come to a tour, you get free lettuce. So maybe that's the best way to do it. Yes, ma'am.
Pre-drilled?
They are, yeah. Yeah, the beaver rafts we use are kind of industry standard for hydroponic. So that they come ready to go. They have the holes, the perfect density. They're the perfect size for fitting our plugs. And yeah, they're great. Any other questions? Yeah. I do eat quite a bit. I don't know, probably our family goes through maybe 2-3 heads a week. It's funny you say that. We have this one lady that comes to farmer's market every week, and she buys like 5 or 6 family bags, and I've gotten to know her, and it's just for her. And she's told me her story. She said she had all sorts of health issues, was in and out of the hospital years ago, and switched to a organic vegetable diet. And it's just like turned her life around. And so she eats our lettuce really all week, amongst other things she gets at market. But she is by far our biggest customer. Because I mean, she's going through at least 18 to 20 heads a week. Yeah, it's impressive. Yep. They are no, they're much smaller. Our trays are about this big. I think they're called Beaver Plastics, 242 count trays. Again, they're very much industry standard. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's just they're styrofoam trays that we fill with substrate. They're about 2 or 3 inches deep, and that's what the root fills out. Yeah, I think that's all I had. Well, thank you all.
Or might bring some books in. Yeah, those books are available, if anybody wants to look through them, they're from a woman that's been a member of, or at least a member of the club.
Give me that in the Zoom.
And, he's would like to put them to
Let's
use.
wait for David. David will-
Well,
Okay.
David, should we end the Zoom?
Gary Reynolds.
David, should we end the Zoom or are you doing it? He's doing it, okay. That was awesome, thank you. Good.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Suggestion?
Sure.
So if you want, with your legislation, you know, whatever that is that you're looking, I would bring that to your lecture at the end and hand it out, kind of edition or. have
That's
something-
a
something
great
that
idea.
takes Contact
Yeah.
or, you know, whatever it is you want.
Sure.
From that, that way, because you know, it's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
And online as well, so.
Yep.
And